Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. So this video is the second episode of the Tommi Mac restoration. So we've made good progress, as you saw in the last video. So this video is solely on the underside of the car. So from the blasting stage, I think we left off on the last video where we said we didn't get it to quite the finish we wanted by scraping and grinding. So we've basically got going into blasting the underside. So we'll show you that in a minute. We'll go over to the unit. We've built a booth up for the blasting, and then what we'll do is hand you over to Elliot and he'll go through all the stages of the underside prep. So there's going to be the blasting stage, the primer stage, and then the other stage will be the actual seam sealer. We'll show you how we do that, and then the actual underbody colour, so a bit of overspray of the white and doing the arches black as well. So along with that, we'll also be showing you the component restoration, so start to finish in on certain components. Probably won't show you all of them because there's a lot to do, but we've certainly got some stages, some before and afters of different components that are going to go back onto the car. So yeah, we'll head into the workshop, show you how we're getting on.
So we're stripping the underside of the car. We've got as far as we can with hand stripping. So we've decided to get the little blaster out and see if we can get into the nooks and crannies, get the last little bits of rust, paint, etc. So I've set up a little booth in the workshop. It's not ideal, but it's what we've got to work with. As there's only a little bit of blasting to do, it shouldn't be too bad really. Okay, so we're inside the makeshift booth. As you can see, we've hand stripped the majority, but areas like this in the corners, it just ends up coming diminishing returns, and you just spending hours and hours, and it's just not that efficient. So we decided to go to the blaster. Hopefully that'll make a nice job out of all of those small areas, you know, in here where the arms all mount are difficult. And yeah, anywhere around, you know, like exhaust hangers there, it's just difficult. So yeah, the blaster should make a good job of that. Okay, so here we've got the TME's full set of rear arms. They're all aluminium. So we won't be painting them, we'll be putting them through the dry blaster and then through the wet blaster to shine them up, and then we'll give them a coat or something to just give them a little bit of protection. But before we put them in the blaster, I need to give them a clean, make sure there's no grease or anything that's going to clog up the blaster. So I'm just in the process of blasting these rear arms. I sort of just wire brush all the grease and stuff that's on them just to stop the blaster getting clogged up. The ones at the back there, as you can see, they're done, so they're ready to go to the wet blaster next. So I've just got to do a couple more and then we'll show you the wet blasting. So we're at the wet blaster now. All the arms have been dry blasted and done a couple of them wet now. Basically the dry blaster, they come out dull, and this just gives them a nice shine and a smoother finish that we can easier to protect. So just quickly to show you, if you come down here, this left arm is one that comes out the dry blaster. You can see it's quite a matte finish, and then after the wet blaster, shines it up really nice. A lot more like how it would have come out of the factory. So I'm just going to finish off the ones I've got in that blaster there, and then I'll give them all a coat of protection, and then once they're done, if they need ball joints, boots, etc., then they'll be done, and if they need a little quick tidy up after that, then we'll just chuck them back in. Okay, so all the arms are blasted and wet blasted now, so they're looking nice, looking brand new. So I'm just going to put a small, like a real thin coating of ACF 50, which is used a lot in like aviation industry. It just basically puts a real thin coating, just imagine it as a thin coating of oil that just keeps oxygen off the surface. We'll put it on and put them on the shelf, and then they'll be ready to bolt on the car when the rest of it's done. Here on the floor we've got some of the original parts. As you can see, a lot of surface corrosion. The car's really solid, so it's just getting rid of a lot of surface corrosion and refinishing stuff basically. The original exhaust, really like rare to come across. Well, we all know these Jap cars, they will get aftermarket exhaust put on. So we're going to try and retain that if we can, so we'll see what we can do with it. It's pretty solid. We've had to cut a few bolts, sort of standard, but yeah, it should be nice. It should be nice, nice and original. I think Chris discussed before the different options for springs and shocks for the car. You can go with an aftermarket set, but they'll be the wrong colour. Technically not the right ones for the car. These ones look in pretty good condition, so Chris has decided he's going to go with these. So we're going to give them a refurb. So we're just stripping them apart, taking the top mounts off, springs out. So we'll blast and paint the shock bodies themselves, and then it'll be new springs, which we'll probably paint black or powder, send them off to powder coat. Yeah, so we'll keep the OEM shocks looking nice and factory, just how we want it really. Okay, so we're in the paint room. Shocks have been blasted, the housings. So we're just going to give them a coat of paint. Same as the top mounts. Rear top mounts, we've got new front top mounts to go on. Yeah, OEM black, nothing fancy. And then the springs will be the same, but it'll be powder coat. Blasted steel's hard to clean for paint. So if you rub a cloth over it, and it just picks up all the lint from the cloth, no matter what cloth you use. And then when you paint it, you've just got loads of hairs and stuff, and you've got furry shocks, which you don't really want. So I'll try and clean it with like a contactless sort of method, just using different types of degreasers and just blowing it off. And then sometimes you can rub it down with a rubber glove just to get any grit or anything that's still left on there. Okay, update on the TME. The underside's now blasted, the temporary boost's gone. We stripped the majority by hand, but it got to a point where we wanted a really good good finish for the paint, and you just can't get in all the nooks and crannies. So up in little corners, just areas where you can't get the grinder and hand tools, the blaster just comes in handy. It's not a nice job to do, but it's worth it in the long run, because we're completely back to bare metal now. So the process after this will be to epoxy it. We'll do it with a colour matching the factory E-coat, which the shell would have been dipped in from the factory. And then on top of that will be the underseal, which is the beige colour, and then the white overspray and the white in the engine bay. Okay, so in the engine bay, I blasted up to here. I'll be feathering that edge out by hand. The paint up there is really good, so we're not going to epoxy it or mess with it. I'll epoxy up to here, do the chassis legs all the way around. Okay, so I'm underneath the car again, and I'm just about to do the spray sealer. So we want it as factory as possible, which is essentially small square patches of sealer that they put in strategic areas to stop stone chips, corrosion, and to seam seal, essentially. The factory uses like an airless pump, instead of sort of a traditional spray gun sort of setup, from what I'm aware of. That equipment is, you know, for people like us, it's kind of not within reach. So you have to make do with what you got. So we've got a good gun. It's a spray gun essentially for sealer. So it is air fed. It doesn't quite give you the exact finish of factory, but it's about as close as you're going to get within reason. So that's what we're going to go for. There's a couple of routes you can go down. You can mask edges, which will give you a hard edge like this. So we'd create a square with masking, spray it, unpeel it. It can sort of look slightly false with a hard edge like that, which is a shame, but the alternative you get with an air powered spray gun, you'll get an overspray pattern around the edges, which is hard to get rid of, and the factory didn't get that. So you either mask it or you don't. If If you don't, you get the overspray pattern. If you do, you get a hard, sort of false looking edge, in my opinion. I'm going to sort of go in between the two, and I'm going to do a soft edge to try and get something a little bit more natural, which is this one here. So it's slightly softer edge than, say, your hard edge like this one. And then we'll fill around the gun settings, try and get the best finish match to the finish that we can. And that'll be the sealer done, and then we'll be on to paint tomorrow. So with the spray gun, you've got 3 knobs that you can turn. One's sort of your fan pattern, one's your pressure, and one's the volume of sealer that will come out. And a combination of all those can give you all sorts of different finishes, and it can be really hard to nail in the exact one you want. And the gun can be pretty temperamental. So on the floor here we've got, you know, me messing around with settings, and it'll show you, you know, all the different range of finishes you can get, from real thick, stodgy looking stuff to real fine finishes, and everywhere in between, basically. So the car's going to have 3 products on it, essentially. It's going to have an epoxy primer. It's quite high build, good corrosion resistance, and good adhesion to bare metal. So that'll be the foundation of the job, basically. Everything relies on that, so that's got to be as well cleaned, keyed up, and prepped as possible. And then following on from that, I will prep the areas that are going to have seam sealer. So we're doing the seam sealer in the OEM style patches. So we've got to look back at the photos, remind ourselves of where those patches are, mark them on the car, key them up, and then I'll do those areas. And then after that, it will be the body colour, which will be the white. So I'll be painting the engine bay completely white, and then moving underneath the car, it will be overspray. From the sides, for the most part, where they would have painted the sills, the paint will drift under. It will build a coat of paint on chassis rails like this, and obviously there will be almost nothing behind from the shadow that the chassis rail casts, essentially. And then at the back of the car, on the spare wheel well, it's almost a full coat of paint where they paint the back of the car, essentially. So that's the 3 steps. Okay, so over on the shelf, we've started to get some of the parts restored. So there's some components that obviously have been painted, a little bit dusty. Some have been painted. Obviously you saw us doing the arms. So to blast the arms, we leave the boots on. Basically, if you take that boot off, it's going to be a nightmare to clean, grease everywhere. We don't want that going through the blaster, so we keep the boot on. Blast the arm, wet blast the arm, protect the arm, and then should it need new boots, which this one does, we'll then replace all the boots. So we've started doing that on a couple of the arms. Obviously got transfer box, which has been blasted, wet blasted, waiting for the zinc bolts to come back to put it back together. Little covering plates, little details like that, that's black. Same with the rear diff, same process. Blasted, wet blasted, small sections like breathers all painted. So yeah, just got to rebuild those when we get the bolts back from the zinc platers. So we're in the paint room. We've had to tint our own colour to try and match the factory e-coat. And so I've just been doing that. So I've got enough for 5 gun loads here, tinted. So I'm just applying the hardener to 2 of them, and then we'll get painting.
Right, so here we are under the car. Just wanted to quickly show you how it's looking. So basically the 3 stages. We've got the grey epoxy primer here, which is a really good water resistant primer, protects the underside, stop any rust coming through, and it's not a lot thicker, but it's thicker than paint basically, and that is a real good protection for the underside, so that's why they use it from factory rather than paint itself. And then what you can see here is the seam sealer. We've replicated the original patterns that's come out with the factory basically, so we've marked all that up, redone that, so that looks lovely. We can overlay some photos of the whole car. We've got some nice photos of it when it's up in the air. So there, that's all done, and then we've done the overspray of the white, so the boot floor is painted. Have a little bit more on the boot floor, and then along the sills here, and you can see how we've dusted it in across the side of the chassis legs and into the centre of the car. So yeah, it's all looking complete, looking really good, and now we're going to start the rebuild process, as I said earlier. So super excited now to get it up and running and back together. So we'll leave it to the boys. Okay, so there we have it. That is the underside paintwork and prep complete. I'm really happy with it, how it's gone. It's looking fantastic. I think it's looking really like OEM, exactly how we wanted it to turn out. So super happy with that. I'm really excited for the next stage. So going on to the next video, what we're going to be doing is rebuilding the car basically. So all the components that are going to be restored are going to go back onto the car, and then we're going to show you the rebuild process. So that'll be in the next video coming up. And after that, basically the car is going to go onto its wheels. So hopefully the next point is we're going to get it rolling, because we actually need to get the car out of the workshop now. Initially, I think I said in the first video that we had a 4-week window. It's gone way beyond that. We've actually pushed the diary back a little bit because it was difficult to stop it where we got to. The job got bigger, you know, we took the engine out. So long story short, we're going to get it rolling. We're going to pull the car out of the workshop. I'm going to put it into some dry storage for a little while we get another customer's car in, because the diary's backed up a little bit and we've got other restorations now we need to crack on with. So unfortunately my car has to go to the side while we get some customers' cars done and through the workshop. What we will do meanwhile, in between the other jobs that are in the workshop, is actually do the restoration work on the engine. So cosmetics on the engine, like rocker cover, repaint, all the components, the ancillaries like the aircon pump, alternator, that sort of stuff, is all going to get refreshed. So the plan is to do all that, engine, gearbox, transfer box, get it all fresh, ready to go in the car when we get the car back in the workshop. So yeah, you'll have one more video before it goes away in storage of the rebuild, and then there may be a little bit of a break until we get the engine back in the car. So that's it for now. Hope you've enjoyed it. Please give us a like, comment below, and we'll see you on the next one.